So before I start, I have to throw this disclaimer up here. I made up a story. It may or may not be nearly identical to something you've experienced, but I promise I'm not talking about you. This is Martha. You can tell she volunteers at church because she's happy and smiling. After church one Sunday, the pastor asks if she can help with vacation Bible school. She doesn't want to. She is completely overscheduled this summer. In fact, she was already feeling overwhelmed in the parking lot before church and only managed to calm down by eating a king-size Kit Kat bar. But the pastor says they really need the help, and she doesn't want him to think she's lazy, so she says yes. They have a planning meeting, and she goes in thinking, I can just help with snacks. That's about all I can handle right now and nothing more. But two people don't even show it all, and nobody else there wants to run it, and there's talk about just not doing it this year. And she thinks the kids would be so disappointed, and so she's surprised to hear her own mouth say the words, I'll run it. She yells at herself on the way home. And the week leading up to it, she finds herself increasingly panicked that things won't get done on time, but nobody else seems to care like she does. She stays up all night the night before trying to copy some craft she saw on Pinterest because Susan Millridge will be there, and if things aren't perfect, she'll probably make some comment about how it was much cooler when I used to run it. She wakes up with the start the next morning surrounded by Red Bull cans and zebra cake wrappers. She screams at her kids in the car because, God forbid, she be late like all the other volunteers are. Martha manages to plaster a smile on her face and fake enough enthusiasm to make it through the week. At the end of the week, she dies of a heart attack. Or at least wishes she would when she realizes it is only 2 weeks until the back-to-school bash that she's supposed to be decorating for. She is just burnt out. Raise your hand if you have ever felt completely burnt out in your life. Now, I understand that I could have replaced Vacation Bible School with student activities or work responsibilities or a lot of other stuff, and the story would pretty much be the same. So let me ask you, and this is the last in a series on not being selfish, on denying ourselves and following Jesus. Is Martha's problem that she's too selfish and needs to surrender more of herself? See, my fear in preaching that you need to abandon yourself and follow Christ is that some of you think it will look like that. You've been there before. Or you've seen somebody else do this, or you're there right now and you don't know what to do. So a lot of times, when you teach, the hard thing is that there's different audiences. And for the past 2 weeks, I hope I have made some of you uncomfortable because you're selfish and you need to deny yourself. But there are others that I've made uncomfortable because you are burnt out or you've been there before and you're trying to figure out how I can deny myself and follow Jesus in a way that won't make me want to hurt my kids or other people around me because I'm just so tired and exhausted. So what is it that leads up to that point of just overworked exhaustion? For a lot of people, it is the desire to please others. Paul writes this letter to the church of Galatia, and he has some really tough things to tell them, and he kind of tells them up front that he is not worried about upsetting them. He says, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. Some people live to make other people, the people around them, happy. You just want everybody to be happy and everybody to be happy with you. Now, it's not wrong to enjoy making people happy. I mean, you have kids, you love doing stuff for them. You have friends, you like to make them happy with you. But it becomes a problem when their response to you, their approval of you, or their response, their happiness is what drives you in life. You say yes to stuff not because you want to do it at all. You say yes to stuff because you don't want to say no and have them be like, oh, I'm disappointed with you. And you don't want to deal with that. And so you find yourself saying yes to a lot of stuff because of that pressure to please other people. Or you spend time worrying excessively about the possibility of other people being upset with you for not doing enough. And we see this in all areas of life. You worry, oh, do my coworkers think I'm lazy if I call in sick with the flu? Or, am I not doing enough in this area, And let me tell you though, if you live and die based on the happiness of other people, you're going to be miserable, whether it's your kids, your spouse, your family, or your friends. Because here's the truth, you will never make everyone happy. Ever. Like there's this thing, it's where they have these celebrities on this TV show, and they read mean tweets that people have sent to them. And these are people who are like world-class, best at what they do, and people hate them and say mean stuff to them about the stuff they do. Russell Wilson reads one and says, I'm tired of people saying Russell Wilson is too short to play quarterback. He's ugly too. And Russell Wilson, he's one of the best people in the world at what he does. And not only that, character-wise, he's a great guy. And people find reasons to be upset with them. You will never, even if you are the best in the world at doing whatever it is that you're trying to do, you're never going to make everybody happy. You have to let go of that. And that's hard because I want people to like me. I want to believe, right? If I'm just a good guy and a hard worker, that everybody's going to be happy with me all the time. And then I became a pastor. Not only will you find that you can't make everybody happy all of the time, there are some people that it is impossible to please. There are some people that no matter what you do, it's never going to be enough for them. Maybe you've had this experience, right? You find a new recipe and you go out and want to try it. Maybe you spend a little bit too much on the ingredients and all that. You spend 2 hours cooking it and you even plate it really nice, like how you see on TV. And you put it in front of your kids. And what do they say? Give me chicken nuggets! Yeah! And it's so hard. And you're always going to have some people that do that no matter how hard you work at something, even if it's done something specifically to please them, that it won't be enough for them. And you're going to run through this over and over again in your life. And so you cannot live for their happiness because sometimes it's going to be an unattainable goal. Sometimes it's just the shadow of the expectations that other people might have of you. You make assumptions about what they might think or not think about you, and then you make decisions based on those assumptions. Like when you have your in-laws over and you stress out cleaning your house and every nook and cranny and behind all the furniture, and the whole time you have playing in the back of your mind the possibility that they make some comment about it. And if you're honest with yourself, you kind of hate them while you're doing it because they're making you do all this work. They haven't even said anything yet. They might not even say anything. They might not even know. But it is the shadow of their expectation that you allow to drive yourself, and it's making you miserable. You're shadow boxing. So Paul writes to the church at Galatia. He says, do you think I'm not here to make other people happy? He says, not at all. If I'm to live for the approval of others and the fear of their judgment, well, what else should I be doing? 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 4, Paul describes their approach to ministry. But just as we have been approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel, so we speak, not to please man, but to please God who tests our hearts. Look, when you do stuff at the church, don't do it to try and impress other people. Don't do it because you feel pressured because the pastor asked you to. Do it because you love Jesus. Like there is a huge difference. And sometimes, people will continue in a ministry that they hate doing and they see like no effectiveness in. And if you're not serving in joy, you're robbing that ministry of the power that God wants to work in it. And here's the thing, when I see people grow in their faith, when I see people get closer to Jesus, it 100% all of the time leads to a desire to serve on their own. And here's the thing is, as far as pleasing other people, the book of Colossians and Ephesians as well, even slaves are told not to be motivated by a desire to please their masters. Here's a section in Colossians 3. Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. Now, you may not be a slave. I don't think any of us are bondservants here today. But if you have young kids, it's pretty much the same thing. We're to seek the good of other people. But our reward doesn't come from that. And if you can imagine the situation of a slave, it doesn't matter really how hard they work. They're not getting paid for it. And, the people who own them in this case may or may not treat them well. And yet he says, no, work hard in everything that you do because God is the one who sees. It doesn't matter whether or not other people acknowledge the work that you're doing. God is the one who sees, and he's the one who promises reward, even if your situation is crazy unfair. Even if you never see the payoff and acknowledgement from other people. That the center of your motivation is you are working for Jesus. And that is true for slaves. It's true for the single mom. It is true for that person who's been working that same job for 15 years without a raise. It's true for all of us. That our motivation and our reward comes from God. And I've had ungrateful bosses before, and it can be difficult, but it didn't matter because I wasn't working for them anyways. I was working to please God. So if you want to stop living to make other people happy, the single biggest thing that you can do is to so fix yourself on the idea of who you are in Christ and God's approval of you. And if you're grounded in that, the approval of other people will matter less. I don't need that stuff from other people. I know who I am with God. I'm confident of that. Second way that we end up going into burnout, and this was a lot more with me, is not even like a desire to please other people, but you see the needs around you. And you feel you have to meet all of them. I really ran into this very hard about 9 years ago. And my mom needed help. She was going through her second divorce. She was drinking heavily. She was an emotional wreck and this huge bundle of needs. And some of those self-inflicted and others just needs. And I had a hard time of drawing the line with where my responsibilities were because I was brand new in my faith. And I understood that God wanted me to love others as I love myself. And I just felt like, oh man, if she needs anything at all, no matter what the cost to me or my life, I need to be rushing in there to save the day. Some of you have relatives in addictions or friends who never seem to be able to hold down any kind of job, or people with chronic health issues in your life, and it seems as though the needs are always there and never ending. And I've had to learn that I can't do everything. It's like giving blood. I gave blood this past Wednesday. And I have a rare blood type. And so I used to constantly get calls several times a month from the Red Cross and now the community blood bank or whatever. And they'd ask me to give. They'd always say, there is right now a tremendous need in your area for blood. Specifically your type. There's a tremendous need. We need your blood. Please come and give. Could you imagine me thinking that it was personally my responsibility to meet the shortfall for Oregon County myself? I would constantly struggle with guilt and would put myself in danger. There is a real limitation to what my body can handle. And look, part of their slogan is the need is constant. It's always going to be there. You know, there are people who that could be the slogan for their life. My needs are constant. And so if I made it my responsibility to try and meet that, I would put my life in danger. Some things I can do. I can give blood regularly, like every 8 weeks, I think it is. There are some things I cannot do. I can't do anything about the fact that not enough people donate blood, other than guilt-tripping you right here and right now to go give blood. Go give blood. There's always going to be needs around you. Jesus told his disciples, right? He says, you've got to deny yourself and follow me into death. And yet Jesus did not expect even his closest followers to work without stopping. In Mark chapter 6, he has sent them out in the villages to preach the gospel and heal people, and they've just returned from doing that. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. You ever been like that in your life? Where you are so busy and coming and going, you don't even have time to stop and eat. And I forgot the statistics on the American family right now. It is a vanishingly small number of us that sit down and eat a meal as a family like once a day. I mean, we're grabbing cheese stick and a handful of goldfish out the door, throwing them to our kids in the back seat of the car, running from one thing to the next to the next. And in this case, they are surrounded still by people with needs. They want to see Jesus. The sick are coming to him. Please heal me. Please heal me. And it became, in a way, suffocating. Drowning in the needs of other people. And I've been there. You feel like you've given all you have to give, and the needs are still there. And sometimes we tell ourselves, well, I just need to work harder. Because there's still a need. I need to work harder. I need to give more because it's not enough. And Jesus tells his disciples, stop. Let's get away from these people and rest. Some of you need to do exactly this. The third way that we get ourselves into a burnout position is not a desire to please people, not because even we see all the needs that are out there, it is self-pressure. We put ourselves under crazy expectations. And I see this more often in men with stuff you're good at. If you can do something well and you love to do it, oh, the temptation is there to just more and more and more and more. During the same period that all that stuff was going on with my mom, I was putting intense pressure on myself at work. I was making the redneck leather belts, and I could make them real fast. And I wanted to make them faster and faster. They were having fist fights, literally at the drop-off point at the warehouse over the last box of redneck belts. It was that intense. And I need to hit my quotas, and I need to match this production. And I remember just, understanding that correlation of more coffee equals more work, more coffee, more work. And there's a limit to that. And I'm a really good student, and I was going through Bible college at the time. And I pushed myself because I had been a lazy student before. And I swore to myself I would never, take for granted, especially, God's given me this opportunity. And so I took every single class I could. And I pushed myself. I'm not just going to do the bare minimum. I had professors reminding me, hey, write this paper, everybody, and Aaron, the maximum number of pages you can write is this. I don't want any more than that. And I was good at teaching. And what had started with just sitting in the back and clicking through slides at church had turned into running an outreach program with the youth and teaching 3 different groups. And I was frustrated with myself because I had all this stuff going on, and I just felt like the answer, it wasn't that I needed to do less stuff. No, the answer was I needed to work more. At one point telling myself, I don't even want to spend any time in a given day doing anything that is not preparing to teach or studying or working or sleeping. That's all. I just need to cut all the excess out. And then the head pastor of the church resigned. And I looked at that and I thought, yes, this is another thing I can do good. I learned a hard lesson. I cannot do everything. Now, I can do a lot of stuff poorly. And this is what some of us think we're doing. We think we're doing a lot of stuff, but what we're really doing is doing a lot of stuff halfway because we've overcommitted. But I can't imagine what it was like for Jesus, because I have limitations. Jesus could actually do everything perfectly. People had needs, and he could actually meet all of them. The best teacher ever to walk the planet could heal anything. And yet sometimes he didn't. Have you ever considered that? Jesus goes to this pool in Jerusalem, and it's filled with the sick and the lame. And in these lay a multitude, John chapter 5, a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who'd been an invalid for 38 years. So John chapter 5, Jesus goes to this man and heals him. A pool full of people with needs. He chooses one person and he heals him, and he uses that to illustrate a lesson to the Pharisees. But he only heals the one guy. Now in other situations, at other times it says, Jesus healed everybody who they brought in. Here he heals one person. There were towns in Israel that he didn't go to. He could only physically be in one place at a time. Jesus said very clearly that he was there to do his Father's will. Later on in the same chapter, he says, so Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise. Look, there will be no shortage in your life of good things that you can be doing. But our call is not just to be doing good things, but to be following God's will for our life. And so here's the truth. If you say yes to everything that comes into your life, you are going to miss out on the best things. Because when the best things come along, you're going to be filled up to here. And you're not going to have any extra energy or time to follow God's leading into those things because you've said yes to everything else. And in my case, I was too busy trying to do work and study and ministry, and the best thing that I was missing out on was being a husband. You might have been wondering where Sarah fit into all of that stuff that I was doing. The answer is not much. See, all that other stuff I was doing, it was good stuff. But if I am not going to be a good husband and a good father, I cannot be a good minister of the gospel. And so I want you to know that your ministry, the most important ministry you do, begins in your house. Before you're going to meet the needs of your neighbor, before you're going to go and do everything at the church or take on everything extra you can at work, your ministry begins in the home. That is the most important charge that God has given you. Now, I'm not saying that you say, like, I'm sorry, Pastor, I can't literally do anything at church. I hang out with my family all the time. But you need to be meeting their needs. And if your other obligations are causing them to suffer, it is cause for you to reevaluate what you're doing. And that's what I had to do. I had to step back from a lot of the stuff that I was doing. I had to establish boundaries with my mom of the things that I could do to help her and the things that I couldn't. We went through counseling, and our marriage survived, and we grew together, and I learned, like I said, some very difficult lessons. I'm grateful that in my case, it didn't lead to me, leaving the ministry altogether. It didn't lead to the total collapse of my life, but I know people who've not recognized the warning signs, who have blown right past them, and the consequences have been much more severe. But I'll be honest with you, I still struggle. This is like, half me preaching to you, half me like reminding myself of what I need to continue to watch myself for. Because people still ask me to do all kinds of stuff. And there's no shortage, I guarantee you, as a pastor, there's never a shortage of good things that I could be doing, and different groups and people I could be visiting, and stuff I could be doing, different things in our town locally and in our state, and people asking me to sit on boards and stuff, but I turn things down. Sometimes I need to turn more things down. I take Mondays off, generally. There are times that I don't answer my phone when you call me because I'm on a date. I promise you, if you leave me a voicemail or just send me a text, I will check it afterwards, but, I try and separate off that time. There's a word that I want to share with you all. It might be new. The word is no. No! I want you to say it with me. Ready? No! You can say it just fine. Now, I want you to say that word to me. If I come to you and ask you to do something that you don't feel you can do, you can tell me no. I want you to tell me no. And somebody, asking, hey, can you bring aside for Celebrate Recovery? Actually, this week it's not going to be easy. Great! Because you know what that tells me? Is that I can ask you, and you're going to draw those boundaries yourself. And so I don't have to worry about putting you out and putting you over that limit and burning you out without even knowing it. So I'll ask you to do more stuff, and you can tell me no to that too. Now I understand there's a danger here, and Sarah pled with me. She's like, Aaron, if you preach this sermon and all my kids' workers walk out, and I'll be honest, that's the danger. As a pastor, I'm like, oh, I'm going to preach this, and because here's the reality, right? In the church world, those people who don't draw boundaries and don't say no, they do 80% of the work. But learn to say no. Because it doesn't do me any good for you to do 80% of the work for 3 months and then burn out and take years to recover. Because that happens. Oh, that happens so much. So you have to learn the difference between the good things that you can be doing and the best things that God wants you to do. And the only way to tell the difference most of the time between those two is to be close to God. More importantly, you will not have the power to do anything meaningful for Him if you are not close to Him, if you neglect your relationship with Him. In Mark chapter 1, 35 and 37, Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." You know, this reminds me of that video that everybody was sharing online of this mother who shuts herself in a closet to eat a Kit Kat bar in peace. And her kids are literally reaching their hands underneath the door and saying, "Mommy, Mommy, are you in there? What are you doing in there?" And the disciples are basically like that with Jesus here. Jesus regularly did this kind of thing. Everybody still needed him. The ministry was still there, but he took time to go by himself and pray all throughout the Gospels. Luke 5:16. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. God in the flesh himself took time regularly to do this. There has to be that element in your life. If you aren't being fed, if you aren't growing in your relationship with God, you cannot serve other people in the gospel. There has to be a proportion. Now, if you go into a time of life and you are doing more, you need to be growing more. You can't give other people what you don't have. And it is astounding to me, and I'll be just transparent with you guys, this is common in pastors. It is common in pastors to have zero time that they spend with God alone that is not preparing to preach and teach. And I have been off and on throughout my ministry. I have stretches where I've been really consistent. And then I'll get busy, right? And I'll be like, oh, I've got all this other stuff to do, and I don't really have time for that. And every time I've done that, I have gone back towards that burnout mode. And more I've realized, I can't afford not to spend time with God. Because that's what everything else flows out of. Now, nobody needs my jokes, my drawings, or whatever else I contributed. They need Christ. They need him working through me. And if I'm not absolutely desperate for that in my own personal life, I can't tell other people how awesome Jesus is. I'm like, well, I've not talked to him since last year. Now, here's the thing. I'll end with this. You have to understand that sometimes, beyond all of this, God calls you into times of difficulty and sacrifice. See, back in Mark chapter 6, remember, everybody's coming and going, not even a chance to take a bite, to eat, and Jesus tells them, let's withdraw and rest. And here's what happens when they try and do that. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place, and I bet you, the whole way, the disciples were just, oh man, we get time with Jesus alone. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Now Jesus recognized their need for rest. And they went to go do that, and yet in this time, he chose to do the hard thing, which was to meet the needs of the crowd that was there. But I promise you that Jesus was not sitting there worried about them being mad at him if he didn't teach them. He wasn't worried about pleasing people. Jesus didn't just do this because he felt he had to meet every need that people had. And he didn't do it out of some desire to prove himself. He did it because that was what God wanted him to do in that moment. And so look, if you follow Christ, there are going to be times when he calls you to go above and beyond in the sacrifices in your life. And if you go into it with the right motive and with the right relationship with him, he'll bring you through it. And like I've met people, doing that kind of thing in their life and serving and going above and beyond. I'm like, I can't even understand how they do it, and it's generally for short periods of time. But I've seen them do it in joy. Like I'll say, when I went on a mission trip in Guatemala, I mean, we were like sun up to sundown. I had set apart that time out. I said, look, for this week, I don't need to do anything else. I'm not going to be like, oh, guys, I need my, 2 5s and a 15 here. And I lost 8 pounds of weight that week. I mean, I was, just covered with kids the whole time. And it was great. In fact, I was like so disappointed when they took a day to go shopping. I was like, what are you guys doing? We didn't come here to go shopping. We came here to preach the gospel. Let's go work. And so I invite you today, just spend some time evaluating your life. Maybe you're that person, you're on the edge of burnout right now. And you don't feel you can add a single thing to your life. I want you to know that feeling that way is not generally an indication of selfishness. But you do need to evaluate the things that you've committed yourself to. Maybe take some time and step back. Withdraw to a place alone and spend time with God. Others, you're in a pretty good position right now. But I want you to serve in such a way that 50 years from now, you can still serve in the same way, in the same joy. Don't neglect your time with God. Remember that it is okay to tell other people no. Let's pray. God, I pray for the people of this church. God, we want to do good things in our life. We want to be active. We want to be busy, to be used. We want to meet needs and make people happy. But above all, I pray that our hearts would just be so focused on you that we're following your will because we're holding your hand. We know exactly where you want us to be and what you want us to be doing. Serving in your power because of your promised rewards to us. Help us to recognize the things that come along that we could be doing but we shouldn't be doing, and to say no. I pray that you'd give us those times and seasons of rest in your presence, so that after that we can go back to fulfilling the calling that you've given us in our lives, whatever that may be. I pray that we would be an example that when people watch us follow you, that they would see lives that are well balanced, living in power and joy. In Jesus' name, amen.